Hello, I'm Charlie Brooker, and welcome to So Wrong It's Right, a panel game celebrating the joy of failure. Yes, this is the show that hails the very worst of the very worst, but in a light-hearted, ironic way, rather than in a detailed analysis of the Armenian genocide sort of way. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't mention the Armenian genocide at all. Failure can begin early, although it's impossible to fail at school these days, with pass marks in maths sometimes being as low as 10% or 1 in 8. The Germans have a term for celebrating other people's failure. They call it Schadenfreude. We've got one too. It's the Got Talent franchise. Joining me tonight are the pathetic Richard Herring, who came here by bike, the pitiful Holly Walsh, walked, I think, and the successful, handsome, probably rich comedy writer Ian Morris, who glided into the studio on a cloud of his own smug accomplishment. OK, this round, the first round, is called Wrong Time, Wrong Place. I'll be asking my guests to cast their minds back over their useless lives in an attempt to out-wrong each other with mistakes from their own pasts. This week's question is, what's the worst thing you've ever done to impress someone? People say I'm a show-off. When I'm on a show, they turn it off. Not that anyone would have heard me make that joke. Magic tricks. Performing magic tricks can be impressive. I recently charmed a woman into bed by making 500 banknotes appear in her hand. True story. I can easily tell when I've impressed someone. Their eyes widen, their jaw drops open, they gasp, their tongue turns black. Oh, no, sorry, that's strangling. OK, what's the worst thing you've ever done to impress someone? That's what we're interested in. Richard, I will start with you. I don't know why. I imagine you've made lame attempts to impress people.
I probably have. The one that springs to mind, when I was about 23, I kind of had this on-off relationship with someone who was at work, who was in a position of authority over me, really. And so it was kind of... It was a secret...
Was this a teacher?
No, I was grown up at the time, but it was this sort of on-off thing, and it was a secret. It was a secret thing we weren't allowed to talk about. And I thought one night it would be a good idea. What I decided to do was to just go round to her house unannounced and see if she was in, which is a crazy thing to do, you know, when you're not actually going out with someone. And to make it better, I bought a bottle of wine and a bunch of flowers from, like, a bucket outside of a newsagent. And so I went to her house and she wasn't in, and I sort of sat there on the steps for about 2 hours waiting for her, with other people in her flats walking past looking at me going, what are you doing? And I realised the flowers were essentially dead. And they were just really dried out. And so what I did, after 2 hours, I gave up, but left the bottle of wine and the dead flowers.
Warning!
It's just like a terrifying... I came to meet you. I maybe left to know I was there. I was here for hours, but you weren't here. Here are some dead flowers and some red wine. It's nearly romantic, but it really isn't.
It's like what you might find on the grave of an alcoholic. He liked his wine, and well, he got those. They're dead now.
I was going to say, that's not going to... I mean, just turning up with standing forlornly on someone's steps...
Yeah, it's a disaster from start to finish. I thought it had to be the worst way to attempt to impress someone.
I can't picture Daniel Craig's James Bond doing that. It's traditionally... The stink of desperation
it's got everything.
Traditionally off-putting to the opposite sex.
Yeah, exactly. So it was
Do you think that's why she stayed away? Because she could smell the desperation from, like, Pizza Express, wherever she was on a date, most probably.
Yeah, she was obviously out with someone else. It's a disaster to take that. I mean, what an idiot.
Well, you were 23.
And she was a horrible cow as well. What was
I once tried to impress a girl by... Well, I did several... it was Valentine's Day, and I thought, I'll draw... I used to do, sort of cartoons and things. I'll draw a Valentine's card, but I'm going to make it all alternative. And so I'll draw a really anatomically correct, like, human heart that looks like it. I thought it was a bit of a joke. It was supposed to be a bit of a joke, like, Be My Valentine, I've drawn this incredibly gruesome, bloodied human heart. And that was taken as a threat. When you say it was an on-off relationship, what did you do?
Was it that it was on for you, but off for her?
Now, you're a woman. Can you
I'm not speaking on behalf of the women.
You're speaking on behalf of all women.
Yeah.
Can you smell desperation?
From here? It sounds like a brand of Lynx. Lynx, desperation.
Pity.
Yeah.
OK, Holly, What's the worst thing you've ever done to try and impress someone?
I was in a similar situation insofar as I was trying to impress a boy. I was 13 and a half, and I was on a school trip to Guildford Spectrum Leisure Centre. Is anyone here are you from Guildford? Yeah. Yay! Party capital of Surrey, after Woking. But I was at Guildford Spectrum, and there's a massive diving pool with like 3 different sized, diving boards. And I thought it'd be really impressive to show off to my classmates on the school trip and the boy I fancied by diving off the top diving board, which is not a good idea at any time. I was sort of climbed up trying to look as sexy as possible, as sexy as you can when you're wearing a one-piece school regulation swimming costume with your name tape on the front. And I got to the top, I looked over, I instantly regretted it, but I couldn't go down because there was a queue of people behind me, so I jumped. And I don't know whether it was sort of beginner's luck or whether I have an innate talent for diving. I've never been diving since, but I did an amazing sort of forward somersault and then entered the water incredibly gracefully, and I was sort of like rising to the surface thinking I was going to get a round of applause. When I came up through the water, all I could hear was people screaming, and it turned out as I'd entered the water I'd given myself a massive nosebleed. So there was a huge slick of blood, of my own blood, and my face was like gushing with blood. Next thing I know, I'm being dragged out of the pool by like this middle-aged lifeguard, nothing like David Hasselhoff, it was awful, right? And I'm being put in the recovery position against my will, that's a really awkward angle to be seen. And all my classmates are standing around me, sort of like looking horrified. And not only did nobody fancy me ever after that, I also meant that everybody was evacuated from the pool and they had to actually empty the pool. So I completely ruined the school trip for everyone.
Is that what a sorry tale?
Well, that's the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Was it like a scene from Jaws as you were around this sort of red foam?
Yeah, it was just me being pulled under by my own nosebleed.
Of course, it makes sense that if you get a nosebleed in a pool, they have to empty the whole pool. They can't just ignore it.
No.
In
the sort of 70s and 80s, when I went to a lot of public swimming pools, they sort of didn't really. There's all sorts of things.
It was like a soup.
It basically was. Yeah.
Human soup.
Do you think they had to empty the pool because sharks can smell blood from like 5 miles away? And so there were sharks coming from Woking, Dorking. They were training themselves. 25 minutes from Waterloo, they could be coming from there.
They're going to get stuck in that little sort of Veruca pool.
They'd be like, I can't have a big tail in the Veruca pool, I can't get it clean.
That's a harrowing tale.